Hello family, welcome to Stories by Tochi. We bring you interesting folk tales. Please subscribe and drop a like for us. This generosity would go a long way for us. Also share to family and friends. And please turn on post notification to stay tuned for more. Thank you as you do so. Now let's get into the story. Bianca never liked walking home at night, but in the heart of Port Harcourt, late evenings had a rhythm of their own. Danfo horns blending with loud Afrobeat spilling from Buka radios, Suya smoke curling into the air like stories trying to be told. Her slippers slapped against the cracked pavement of Remula Street, one side of the road dark due to a broken street lamp that no one had fixed in years. The sky above hung low, heavy with heat and secrets, and every now and then a loud laugh would escape from a nearby beer parlor, mixing with the sound of frying pepper and the slurred pidgin of tired men trying to forget the weight of survival. She walked past them with her head slightly lowered, holding a nylon bag of noodles and sardines that Chaik had given her money to buy, even though she knew there wasn't a kobo left in his pocket. Their one-room apartment stood at the edge of the compound, near the well that coughed up brown water on dry days. Inside, the bulb dangled like a tired fruit from a wire, its dim glow casting soft shadows across the cement floor. As she opened the door, the smell of iron and engine oil greeted her. The scent of Chaik's clothes hung beside the window, still dripping from his evening wash. He was asleep on the mat, mouth slightly open, chest rising with that familiar heaviness that reminded her he worked 2 shifts to make sure she had her daily pads and coconut oil. She looked at him for a moment longer than she needed to. There was a time she used to smile at that sight, but these days, the silence between them was starting to stretch its arms wider. She dropped the nylon gently on the tiny wooden table beside the wall, the one they both called dining, even though it leaned to one side like it was tired of pretending to be furniture. From the open window, the neighbor's baby screamed again. Third time this evening. Bianca sighed. This wasn't the life she imagined, not exactly. She had dreams once, bright, loud dreams of Lagos billboards and airport selfies. But life had an odd way of shrinking big dreams into daily survival. And Chaik, as good-hearted as he was, didn't fit into those dreams anymore. Not because he was cruel. Chaik was many things, but not cruel. It was just, he was too quiet, too slow, too ordinary. He didn't know how to talk, not the kind of talking that opened doors. When he spoke, it felt like dragging stones across a chalkboard. His pidgin was thick, his voice cracked from years of shouting across construction sites. He never said, "I love you." Not because he didn't feel it, but because he didn't know how to wrap love into words. He showed it instead. In cold sachet water when she had a headache, in slippers bought from Mile 3 Market when hers tore, in the way he let her eat first even when he was hungrier. But love without language was beginning to feel like food with no salt, edible but hard to swallow. She sat down quietly, reaching for her phone. It was old and glitchy, but it still opened TikTok. She placed it against a plastic cup and began recording herself unpacking the noodles. No words, just music playing in the background. She didn't show Chaik's face, only her hands. The lighting was poor, but she added a filter. In the caption she typed, "Simple meals for the one I love Black Heart." It got 5 views. 1 like. From someone named at IamLissing17. She stared at it for a moment, the corner of her lip twitching. It was nothing. But maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something. The next morning started like every other. Chaik was gone before sunrise, having left quietly, so as not to wake her. She found the usual signs of him, his old Nokia on the window ledge, a neatly folded wrapper on the chair, and the leftover beans he made last night, now cold and stiff in the pot. She didn't eat. Instead, she opened the door to sweep the small veranda. The air smelt of burning refuse and rain clouds. Port Harcourt's sky had that restless look again. She greeted Mama Ozioma, the woman 2 doors down who sold palm oil, and occasionally gave Bianca fashion advice. "Morning, oh," Bianca said. The woman looked up from her stool, squinting through her reading glasses. "Bianca, your boyfriend na better man oh. He day always day greet. Quiet, but he get respect." Bianca gave a short smile. Everyone in the compound liked Chaik. He fixed broken taps without asking for money, fetched water for old women, and once carried a crying child on his back for 30 minutes just to help the mother clean up her shop. Yet, somehow, the more the world saw him as noble, the more Bianca saw him as stuck. He didn't dream, or if he did, he never said them out loud. She longed for someone who could talk to her about big things, about music, about travel, about what they'd do if they ever saw New York in winter. Chaik didn't care about New York. He just wanted Nipa to bring light, so she could charge her phone. As she swept the steps, a thought crawled into her head like an uninvited guest. What if this is all there is? What if I never leave Remula? Later that afternoon, she sat in front of their small table, resting her chin on her hand, scrolling through her feed. She saw girls like her, eating shawarma in Lekki, wearing wigs named after American cities. Some of them didn't even look that special. Just confident. Just louder. That's when it struck her. Not like lightning, but like a slow sunrise. Maybe her life wasn't as boring as she thought. Maybe people would care if she showed it the right way. Not the ragged edges, but the soft parts. The moments where she laughed at Chaik's unfunny jokes. The way he danced like an old man when she played Kiz Daniel. The little things. She opened her phone camera and started recording again. This time, she narrated. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. This is my life. It's not perfect, but it's mine. I live with someone who can't spell my name, but he knows when I'm sad before I say a word. She ended the clip with a short laugh and posted it. 30 views. 2 comments. One said, "This is so pure." The other, "Where's your man's face? Show him nah." She didn't reply, but she bookmarked the video, heart racing slightly. She turned and looked at the door, half expecting Chaik to walk in and ask what she was smiling about. He didn't. He was still at work. So she lay down on their mat, phone on her chest, and stared at the ceiling, wondering if maybe, just maybe, the world would finally see her. Not as a girl stuck in Remula, but as someone worth watching. The days that followed blurred into a quiet kind of motion, like walking through Harmattan fog. Bianca had found a rhythm, even if it was a shaky one. Wake up. Check notifications. Record something. Post it. Wait. She still lived in that room with Chaik, still bathed from the same black rubber bucket, and stepped around the same crack in the floor near the door, but something had shifted. She'd begun to see their lives through a lens now, literally. Every ordinary moment held potential. She started to document little things. Her braiding her hair on the veranda. A steaming plate of EBA on a plastic stool. Chaik's laughter in the background when the neighbor's goat ran off with someone's wrapper. He still didn't know what she was doing. Or maybe he knew and just didn't ask. He was never one to question much. Chaik had his own habits, getting back late, scrubbing his work boots like they were made of glass, humming a song he never finished. There was a peace in how predictable he was. But Bianca had started wanting something less quiet. She scrolled through her comment sections now like someone foraging in a forest. One day, she found a message that made her chest tighten. You should open a page where people can support you. You have something real here. It was from a girl named Ada in Abuja, who said she loved Bianca's honesty. That night, Bianca couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, wondering if a girl from Remula really had something the world wanted. If love wasn't enough, could attention be the currency to trade for freedom? She set up a donation link the next day. Nothing fancy. Just a simple line in her video caption that said, "Support my story if it touches you." She didn't expect much. But within hours, someone sent her 5,000 Nigerian Nairas. Then another. Then 10,000 Nigerian Nairas from someone named Miss Z. She screamed when the alerts came in, half in disbelief, half in guilt. Chaik had just handed her his last 2,000 Nigerian Nairas that morning, asking her to buy pepper and Maggi cubes. She hadn't told him about the donations. Somehow it felt too soon. Or maybe it felt like betrayal. She stared at his back that evening as he washed his clothes in their red basin, his knuckles raw from scrubbing. She wanted to say something, anything, but her throat tightened. She simply handed him his food and kissed his forehead. "Thank you," she said softly. He looked confused but smiled. "You day all right?" She nodded, heart pounding. Later that night, while he snored softly beside her, she held her phone to her chest and whispered, "God, please don't let this be a dream." Her content began to change subtly. Still wholesome, but now edited better, with voiceovers and filters. She posted less of Chaik's hands, more of her own smile, her own words, her own laughter. She told stories. She spoke of sacrifice and struggle, of building love with someone who didn't have money, of being fed when you couldn't feed yourself. People online lapped it up. Her DMs turned into floods. "You inspire me," one said. "Your man is a king," another commented. Bianca smiled at her screen, but something inside her shifted, like she was slowly becoming someone else, someone she'd always been waiting to meet. The more the alerts rolled in, the less present she felt in her own home. It wasn't intentional, but she began to speak less to Chaik and more to her phone. Conversations at dinner became shorter. She would say things like, "Hold on, I'm editing something," or "I need to post before engagement drops." Chaik noticed. How could he not? But he didn't complain. He just sat quietly, eating his food slowly, as if tasting something was the same thing as understanding it. One night, while she was recording a Get Ready With Me clip, he knocked over her ring light by mistake. It crashed to the ground, the bulb exploding like a gunshot. She screamed. Not from fear, but from frustration. "Can't you just stay out of the way for once?" she snapped. The words hung in the air like smoke. Chaik looked at her, stunned. Then he bent, picked up the shards, and threw them in the trash without a word. She wanted to apologize, but pride is a sticky thing. It sticks in the throat, refusing to be swallowed. Later that night, as he lay facing the wall, she whispered, "I'm sorry," but he had already drifted into that deep, tired sleep that comes from both hard work and heartbreak. Bianca stared at the ceiling again. This time, she didn't feel like a girl chasing freedom. She felt like someone climbing a ladder while watching the one person who helped her build it slowly disappear below. Her following doubled in 3 weeks, then tripled. Strangers from Canada, South Africa, even the UK sent messages. "You deserve the world. Don't let a man hold you back." One comment read, "You're bigger than this soft life. You're meant for soft empires." She screenshotted it, not for vanity, but because part of her believed it. She began to imagine herself elsewhere, in Abuja cafes, Lego studios, places where people ordered things by name, not price. She started spending nights editing her captions more than her thoughts. Everything became content. A plate of rice, a sunset from the corridor, the way the fan creaked while she danced alone. But Chaik didn't belong in this new content. He didn't look like the man of a rising influencer. His slippers were too old, his laugh too loud, his silence too long. One day, while filming a voiceover about emotional growth and healthy relationships, she realized she hadn't asked him how his day went in almost a week. Guilt prickled her, but she brushed it off. "I'm doing this for us," she told herself. But somewhere deep down, she knew that us had begun to mean something different. And the scariest part was she didn't know how to stop, or if she even wanted to. The night she received her first major influencer deal, it rained for hours. Not the gentle kind that taps on windows like lullabies, but the type that dragged plastic chairs down the street and flooded every corner of Remula with brown water and lost things. She was standing barefoot in the center of their tiny room, a printed contract open on her phone screen, when the first alert came in. Nigerian Naira 150,000 for a product placement video. She stood there for a long time, holding her chest like it would leak. She didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't dance. She just breathed. A deep, trembling breath like someone realizing they've been underwater for years and have finally found air. Outside, the rain carried someone's forgotten wrapper down the gutter, and she could hear the rustling of the zinc above her like the sky was clapping for her. Chaik was still out at work. He had taken a late security shift for extra cash, the kind of shift he didn't enjoy but took anyway because he thought things were tight. And they were. But only for him now. She sat on the edge of their bed, staring at the inbox where the brand had typed, "Your content stands out. Your storytelling feels authentic. We'd love to work long-term." That word, authentic, bothered her for some reason. She had spent the past 2 weeks painting a version of their life that was brighter than truth, glossier than reality, softer than survival. There was nothing authentic about boiled yam cut into heart shapes or borrowed gowns she returned the next day. But it worked. People were watching. And now people were paying. When Chaik returned that night, soaked to the bone, his teeth slightly chattering from the rain, she didn't mention the money. Not right away. Instead, she asked him to change out of his wet clothes. He undressed in the dark, like he always did, modest to a fault. She placed his food on the floor by the wall. Okra soup she bought from Mama Ijeoma because she'd been too busy filming to cook. He thanked her, sat down to eat, and between one swallow and the next, he said, "Today dem increased the shift hours. I know sure say I fit continue." His voice was rough, tired. She said nothing, just nodded like she was half listening. But she heard him, heard every crack in his voice. It made her feel something she couldn't name. Not quite pity, not quite guilt, a blurry mix of both. After he finished eating, she sat beside him, finally whispering, "I got a deal. Big one." He turned to her slowly. "Which kind deal?" She showed him the email, the transaction, the brand's page. His face lit up, not the wild light of envy or confusion, but pride. Pure and full. "You dey serious?" he asked, half smiling. She nodded. He hugged her then tightly. For the first time in weeks, they breathed the same air. He told her, "You go blow past all of them. I believe you." But as he held her, she couldn't stop thinking about how he looked too small in this hug, like someone left behind at a bus stop, waving at a moving vehicle. She had boarded something. She wasn't sure if he could follow. Bianca moved out of the apartment 3 weeks later. The decision was quick, though the feelings behind it had been slowly marinating for months. She told Chaik it was temporary, that the brand needed her to stay somewhere closer to their studio in GRA, and that they were covering accommodation. It wasn't completely a lie, but it also wasn't true. She had decided she needed silence. A new space. Something she could curate. The compound in Remula had become too loud for her content. Screaming children, generator noise, women shouting prices, the usual chaos of the city. The new apartment was everything the old one wasn't. White walls, glass windows, mosquito-free. The kind of space that gave you the illusion of control. The first night she slept there, alone on a bed that didn't creak, under a fan that didn't squeal, she cried. Not loudly, just enough to wet the pillow. Not for Chaik. Not entirely. But for the weight of change, and the way it pulls you in directions you don't always understand. Chaik had helped her carry her bags to the cab. He didn't ask too many questions. Didn't say much. Just, call me when you reach. She hadn't called. She told herself she forgot. She didn't. She had stared at his contact name for hours, her thumb hovering over the green button. But what would she say? That she liked how it felt to walk into a clean apartment without noise? That she liked hearing her own thoughts? That she didn't miss the smell of engine oil in her clothes? Her content began to shift drastically after the move. There were no more scenes of steaming EBA on plastic stools, or the sounds of distant church rehearsals from the neighbors. Now her videos opened with soft music and captions like "My peaceful morning routine in GRA." She wore silk robes gifted by fans, her hair styled in high buns, makeup light but flawless. The girl from Remula still lived inside her, but she was quieter now, buried beneath aesthetics and algorithms. Chaik was no longer mentioned in the content, not even hinted at. Her new followers assumed she lived alone. One even asked in a comment, "Were you ever in a relationship? You give single girl vibes." She liked the comment, not because it was true, but because it was useful. Being single online was a brand. A safe one. A sellable one. But at night, the silence in her apartment stretched. It didn't feel like peace. It felt like space. Like absence dressed in quiet clothes. She would catch herself scrolling to Chaik's old photos, the ones she never posted. Him tying his shoelaces, fixing the doorknob, smiling in his sleep. She never showed his face online. Not once. Now it felt like he had become invisible everywhere, not just on the internet. But she didn't cry. Not anymore. Instead, she drank lemon tea, adjusted her lights, and filmed another video titled, "How to Protect Your Energy When People Don't Understand Your Journey." The comments rolled in like applause. And in that applause, she buried the sound of everything she was slowly leaving behind. The day Chaik stopped calling was the day Bianca truly felt alone. Not the kind of alone that crept in during cold nights or settled in the silence after a long day. This one came like a closing door. A final, heavy click. For weeks after she moved, he still called her every other evening, even when she didn't answer. He'd text things like "Hope say you don chop" or "Day careful for road." And once, "Just wanted to hear your voice." Sometimes she replied. Most times, she read the messages and left them hanging in the blue ticks of her screen. But something about knowing he was still on the other end of the line made it easier to sleep in the new apartment. When the calls stopped, her chest became a quiet drum. She opened their last chat one night, staring at the message that simply read, "No walla. I hear you." That was all he had said after she told him she was too busy to talk and maybe they needed space. He hadn't begged. He hadn't argued. Just typed those 4 words. And it was in the absence of noise that she understood the weight of presence. She paced her room that night, switching off the ring light that had been left on too long. The shadows it cast across the wall made her feel like she was being watched by her own conscience. She lay on the bed, staring at the white ceiling. Everything around her was clean, beautiful, expensive. And still, it felt like nothing had changed except her. Her following had now crossed 100,000. That milestone came with its own type of chaos. More emails, more paid collaborations, more interviews. She did a sit-down feature with a lifestyle channel that asked her to speak about her journey. She sat on a velvet chair, crossed her legs, and smiled with practiced warmth. The host was impressed. You've grown so fast. What's the secret? Bianca tilted her head and said, consistency and honesty. I share real parts of my life. I think people connect with that. And in that moment, something inside her shifted, because she knew what she had just said wasn't fully true. Honesty had left the room the moment she started cutting out Chaik from her narrative. The videos that brought her fame had roots in a relationship she now pretended never happened. She told stories about being raised tough, about starting with nothing, about teaching herself how to edit videos from an old borrowed phone. All of that was real. But the boy who used to hold the ring light with tired hands, who walked barefoot to buy her paracetamol when she was sick, who saved for weeks to buy her a second-hand Bluetooth speaker, he was gone from the tale, erased like pencil on wet paper. Still, the world loved her. They called her inspiring, humble, a breath of fresh air. She smiled through it all, took photos, posted quotes. But when she got home that night, she scrolled back through her gallery and paused on a picture she had taken months ago. Chaik sitting on a stool, his back to the camera, fixing a broken fan. She had never posted it, and now she never would. Bianca didn't return to Romuald, not even once. She told herself it was because she was busy. And she was. Brand tours, influencer meetups, weekend trips to Lagos for photo shoots. But the truth was that she was afraid of what she would find. Afraid that going back would make her feel everything she was trying to forget. But life has a way of pulling you towards the things you're avoiding. It started with a voice note from Mama Ijeoma. Cracked, urgent, and short. Bianca, you hear what happened to Chaik? That was it. Just that. No context. She froze. Her fingers trembling, she called back immediately, heart thumping like someone banging on her ribs. No answer. She called again. Still nothing. Finally, she opened Facebook, a platform she rarely checked. There it was. A post from one of the old compound boys. Chaik's photo, his full face, the one she had hidden from the world for over a year, posted with the caption, "Rest well, my brother. You tried. Even when life gave you dust, you gave people bread." Her lungs collapsed inside her chest. For a second, the room spun. She dropped the phone. The echo of silence that followed was louder than any scream. She didn't cry right away. She just sat on the floor, arms around her knees, back against the cold wall, rocking slightly, as if trying to hold herself together. And somewhere in the stillness, the realization sank like a stone in her stomach. He was gone. Truly gone. The only person who had loved her before the applause ever came. The only one who never asked her to perform. The funeral was quiet, small, humble, just like him. Bianca arrived late. She didn't wear black. She wore a cream gown, simple heels, and no makeup. Her eyes were bare. Empty. The kind of empty that made people turn away instead of staring. When she walked into the compound, the air shifted. Conversations paused. A few people greeted her with stiff nods. Some ignored her. Others just stared with the kind of eyes that speak louder than words. She made her way to the back, where the coffin sat, still open. Chaik's face looked like sleep. Not the peaceful kind. The deep, unreachable kind. The kind that has no return ticket. She stood over him, one hand on the edge of the wooden box, her fingers trembling. She didn't say anything. Words had become useless. What was there to say that could bring back time? Bring back the man who used to buy her roadside chin-chin, because he knew she liked chewing when she edited? Who used to walk her to the bus stop, carrying her bag like she was made of glass? She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded note. She placed it gently inside the coffin, right beside his shoulder. No one saw what it said. She had written it the night before, after hours of shaking in her living room. When the service ended and they began to lower him, the sky turned gray. Rain began to drizzle, soft and hesitant. She didn't use an umbrella. She stood there drenched, letting the rain soak through the gown, through her skin, through every version of herself that had ever existed. And when the final shovel of earth hit the coffin, she closed her eyes and whispered his name, for the first time in months, like a secret too sacred to say out loud. Bianca returned to Port Harcourt 2 days after the burial, but something had changed in the city, or maybe just in her. The streets still moved the same, the conductors still shouted destinations with that same impatient rhythm, and the smell of roasted corn and diesel still blended into the air like perfume for the broken, but everything now felt muted, like the volume of life had been turned down. Her apartment, which once felt like a reward, now felt hollow. The throw pillows she had carefully arranged on her couch now looked like decoration in someone else's home. She moved around slowly, her limbs heavy with thought, her phone buzzing endlessly with congratulatory messages about her latest milestone, 200,000 followers. She didn't respond to any of them. Her DM was a garden of praise. You're such an inspiration. You're what soft life looks like. Teach us how to be like you. But Bianca had nothing to teach. Not anymore. She sat by the window, legs pulled up to her chest, watching raindrops slide down the glass like they were racing each other to forget. A single cup of untouched tea sat on the table beside her. She hadn't eaten since the funeral. She kept replaying one thing in her head, the way Chaik looked that last time, peaceful in a way he never was when alive. She wondered what his last thoughts were. If he had forgiven her. If he'd still loved her. Or worse, if he had stopped. Her phone rang again that evening. She picked it without checking the caller ID, hoping it would be a wrong number. But it was someone from a podcast team in Lagos. They had invited her weeks ago to speak about her journey out of hardship. She had accepted then. She didn't feel like backing out now. It was easier to pretend to be okay than to explain grief to people who only knew how to double tap and scroll. So she packed a bag, booked her flight, and flew out the next morning. Lagos welcomed her with its usual cocktail of noise and ambition. The studio was crisp, polished, filled with indoor plants and artificial lighting that made everything look soft and filtered. They gave her a chair in front of a clean backdrop and a bottle of water with her name on it. The host was a woman in her 30s, confident, warm-eyed, and charming in that performative way reserved for camera conversations. "Bianca," she began, "your story has touched so many lives. What do you think was the turning point for you?" Bianca smiled gently, the same smile she had practiced in the mirror months ago. "I think the moment I chose myself," she said, "when I realized that I couldn't stay in a space that didn't allow me to grow." The host nodded with admiration, her eyes glowing with agreement. "And what would you say to women stuck in similar relationships?" Bianca paused. Her throat tightened. The lie sat at the back of her tongue like undigested food. "Leave," she whispered. "Choose yourself. Life is too short to shrink for someone who doesn't understand your worth." The host clapped softly. So did the crew. They moved on to the next question. The rest of the session went smoothly. No one noticed her hands trembling. After the recording, she returned to her hotel room alone. She kicked off her heels, pulled off her wig, and stared at herself in the mirror for what felt like hours. The woman who stared back was beautiful, put together, unbothered, but the lie was in her eyes. She walked to the window, pushed the curtain aside, and looked out at the blinking skyline. The city looked alive, full of ambition and betrayal, of dreams being sold and bought under fluorescent lights. She thought about how far she had come, and how far she had drifted from herself. Her success didn't feel like a blessing anymore. It felt like a bargain she hadn't understood until it was too late. She had traded love for independence, silence for applause, truth for marketability. In the world she now lived in, people only loved what they could consume. And she had become easy to consume. A package of pain with a pretty cover. She sat at the edge of the bed, pulled out her phone, and scrolled through old photos she had hidden in a locked album. Chaik, shirtless, brushing his teeth with foam around his mouth. Chaik tying his wrapper at the door. Chaik holding her hand across the small table in their old room, their fingers greasy with groundnut oil. She played a voice note he had once sent her. "No forget to eat, a beg. I sabi say you day busy, but you go still need strength. I day proud of you." His voice filled the room. She cried silently, the kind of cry that didn't need noise. Just surrender. 2 days later, she made a video, different from anything she had ever posted. No ring light. No filter. No trending audio. Just her sitting in the corner of her kitchen in a faded t-shirt, bare-faced, eyes still swollen from crying. She didn't script it. She didn't rehearse. She just spoke. "There's something I've never said here," she began, voice shaking. "All the videos you loved, all the early content, the man behind them was someone I lived with. His name was Chaik. He didn't speak much English, but he knew how to care. He's gone now, and I never gave him the credit he deserved." She paused, wiping a tear. "I said he abused me. He didn't. Not the way I made it seem. He was just confused, overwhelmed. Maybe I was too. But I let the story lean in my favor. Because it helped the views. Because silence is easy to twist. But the truth is, he loved me in a language I didn't have the patience to learn." She posted it. "No capschin. No hashtags." She turned off the comments, muted her phone, and sat in the darkness, letting the weight of truth rest on her like a warm, unbearable blanket. Somewhere in the distance, Lagos buzzed on without her, loud and uncaring. But inside that room, for the first time in months, she felt something real. Not fame, not validation, just grief, just honesty, just the quiet ache of having told the truth too late. She didn't open her phone for 3 days. Not once. Not when it buzzed beside her pillow or vibrated softly across the table like a living thing begging for attention. It stayed where it was, face down, silent, forgotten. She cooked for the first time in weeks, but the rice boiled too soft and the stew had too much salt. She ate it anyway, slowly, like someone punishing their mouth for having an appetite. At night, the silence in her apartment was so loud it made her skin itch. She left the lights on just so her mind wouldn't turn into a haunted house. She slept under her duvet, but didn't feel warm. Grief wasn't loud like people described. It wasn't a scream or a sob. It was a stillness so deep it made her lungs feel tight. Her confession video had gone viral. She knew that without even checking. A friend had called her crying, saying she was brave. Another sent a voice note saying people were debating about her online. Some were angry. Some were empathetic. Some were disgusted. But none of them really knew her. Not Chaik. Not the old Bianca. Not the girl who used to walk barefoot around the compound because she hated the feel of slippers. Not the woman who once believed that being seen was the same as being loved. Now, she understood there was a difference. Attention is addictive. But love, it's quiet, patient, often hidden. Chaik had given her love. She had turned it into content. That was the truth. She took a trip without telling anyone. She booked a cheap cab and traveled back to Port Harcourt, this time with no makeup, no luggage, no plan. She went straight to the street in Remulla, where the old compound still stood like an aging skeleton refusing to collapse. The gates were rusted, the concrete cracked, and the air smelled like smoke in yesterday's rain. She stood outside for a long time before anyone noticed her. Then a small girl, one of the new tenants, peeked through the gate. "Auntie, you dey fine person?" Bianca nodded once. "I used to live here," she said, her voice soft, almost embarrassed. An older woman came out, not Mama Igioma, someone else. She looked Bianca over like one might examine an old song trying to be remembered. "Now you be that internet girl way dem talk say. You dey come see him grave?" Bianca didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her eyes spoke it all. The woman stepped aside. Bianca walked through the narrow corridor, passing old memories like ghosts sitting quietly on plastic chairs. The compound had changed. New tenants. New babies crying. But the well was still there. The tap still leaked. And the door to the room she once called home was now painted a dull green. She touched it gently. No one saw her wipe her face. Then she walked past it, through the back gate, towards the bush path that led to the small burial ground Chaik's uncle had dug himself. The grave was simple. A slab of concrete, a wooden cross. The name misspelled, Chikayokari. No date. No quote. Just the silence of earth trying to hold a memory. She sat on the ground beside the grave. No mat. No stool. Just sand and silence. She didn't talk. Didn't pray. She just sat there, her fingers tracing small circles into the soil. Time slowed. The wind moved lazily through the trees, carrying with it the faint smell of roasted plantain from somewhere far away. A dog barked in the distance. A fly buzzed around her ear and left again. The world kept moving. She didn't. Hours passed like minutes. At one point, she lay down beside the grave, one arm stretched across it as though trying to hold the memory close. She whispered something into the soil. No one heard it, not even the wind. But it was real, and it was hers. After a while, she sat up, wiped her eyes, and reached into her pocket. She pulled out a folded photo, one of the few printed pictures she had of them. It was the one where Chaik was laughing, holding a burnt pot of rice like it was a trophy, and she stood beside him, wiping tears of laughter. She placed it against the base of the wooden cross, and held it there with a small stone. Then she stood up. Her legs wobbled slightly, and used to stillness. She looked down one last time, not as a woman mourning a mistake, but as someone who had finally accepted that some debts can't be repaid with words or gestures, only with presence. She walked back slowly, past the house, past the well, past the gate that creaked like an old throat clearing its grief. No one said anything as she left. They just watched her go. When she returned to her apartment in GRA, she didn't unpack. Instead, she picked up her phone and deleted every video that had Chaik's shadow in it. Every caption that had been built on a twisted truth. Every story she had shaped to fit the market, but not the man. Her followers noticed. The numbers dropped. Brands called. She didn't answer. There were no more curated morning routines, no more falsehoods wrapped in filters. Just silence. And then slowly something new. She started recording again, quiet things. The sound of rain tapping on the window. The way light entered her room through the blinds. A bird landing on the railing and flying off again. No narration. No music. Just life, unedited. Some followers stayed. Some didn't. She didn't care. This time, she wasn't performing. She was living. A few months later, she opened a small nail salon in a less busy part of the city. Nothing fancy. Just clean chairs, soft music, and conversations that didn't need cameras. She never posted about it, never branded it. But when someone asked her why she chose that location, she smiled faintly and said, "It's close to where someone I loved once lived." The girl who asked didn't understand. She didn't need to. Not everyone gets the full story. Some things are meant to stay between the heart and the grave. And sometimes the best stories are the ones that never make it to the screen at all. Not everyone who enters your life will stay, but some people are sent as a gift, quiet, unpolished, but golden at the core. Don't let the noise of the world drown the voice of loyalty. Fame can give you applause, but love, real love, gives you peace. Protect those who pour into you when you have nothing to give. Sometimes the most ordinary-looking person is the one holding the key to your healing. Don't trade presents for popularity. In the end, it's not who claps for you that matters most. It's who stays when the music stops. May you never lose the ones who truly love you while chasing the ones who barely know you. May your heart be wise enough to see value beyond appearance, and may your steps never lead you where your peace won't follow. May your success never cost you your soul. May your name be mentioned in places of favor, and may your story never be used as a lesson of regret. May you be loved loudly, purely, and truthfully by someone who sees your scars and still chooses you every day. May you not rise so high that you forget the hands that held you when the ground was all you had. May your journey be full of light, and your end far better than your beginning. And may every pain you've buried turn to purpose. In Jesus' name, amen. Hope you enjoyed this interesting story. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Turn on post notifications. See you on our next story.